You know, I only stopped at that roadside cafe because I was one sugar crash away from biting someone. Didn't expect much, maybe a dry scone and lukewarm tea. Instead, I met Duke, a biker with a beard so big, birds could nest in it. 5 minutes later, I was on the back of a Harley, holding on for dear life and wondering if my will was up to date. Was it reckless? Yes. Irresponsible? Probably. But boring? Never. So buckle up, sweetheart. Let Grandma tell you how a cinnamon bun crisis turned into the wildest ride of my life. I only stopped at that roadside cafe because my blood sugar was threatening a civil uprising. A woman of my age cannot be expected to function without a decent scone or a strong cup of tea, preferably both. The place looked questionable, but so do I before 9 a.m. The sign outside read The Rusty Piston. Promising. Inside, it smelled like engine oil, old leather, and regret, which, I later found out, was the signature house blend. There, hunched over the bar like a villain in a country western, was a man with a beard so vast and majestic it deserved its own zip code. He had a leather vest full of patches and a face that said, "I once wrestled a bear, and the bear's now in therapy." Naturally, I sat right next to him. He glanced sideways at me, raised a brow. "You lost, ma'am?" I smiled sweetly. "No, just looking for a decent cinnamon bun and some hot water that's been traumatized by a tea bag." He chuckled. "Ain't got tea, but I can buy you a coffee." Now, I don't usually accept drinks from strangers, especially ones who look like they chew gravel for breakfast. But it was cold and I was tired of being polite. Only if it's not decaf. I have standards. He grinned. "Name's Duke. Margaret. But some call me the legendary Grandma." He didn't ask who, but I told him anyway. We got to chatting. I learned he rode a '68 Harley chopper with flames painted on the side and a dent in the gas tank that, apparently, had a story involving a goat, a wedding, and a priest. I didn't ask for details. "You ever ride?" he asked, taking a sip of his coffee like it was whiskey and we were in a saloon. "Only men's hearts," I replied. He choked. Actually choked. When he recovered, he laughed that gravelly, surprised laugh that men do when they're unsure whether they've been insulted or seduced. Then we started arguing about engines. You see, I dated a mechanic in '73. He taught me more about pistons and torque than he ever did about love. So when Duke said something silly like, "A real bike don't need no computer," I raised an eyebrow that could slice glass and replied, "And a real man doesn't fear fuel injection." He stared at me. "Lady, you got fire." "Better than having spark plugs that misfire," I said, sipping my coffee like it was a mic drop. 10 minutes later, he looked at me with a glint in his eye and said, "Wanna go for a spin?" "Just around the block." Now listen. I've made a lot of poor decisions in life. One of them involved a flamenco instructor named Diego and a homemade sangria that doubled as lighter fluid. But this felt different. I stared at Duke. The beard. The leather. The faint smell of gasoline and rebellion. And then I thought, why not? My last thrill was when I found my reading glasses in the fridge. "All right," I said. "Let me just tighten my scarf." The bike roared to life like a mechanical dragon. I climbed on behind him, gripping his jacket like it was the last cookie on the plate. We tore out of the parking lot, wind whipping my hair, adrenaline pumping. We didn't just go around the block. Duke had a loose relationship with directions. We ended up riding along a cliffside road with views so dramatic I nearly clutched my pearls. If I'd had any pearls. By the time we pulled back into the cafe slot, I was grinning like a teenager who'd just stolen her dad's car. "You all right?" he asked. I hopped off like my hip wasn't threatening to file a complaint. That was better than bingo night. He looked at me like I was the eighth wonder of the world. "You're not like other grandmas." "Sweetheart," I said, fixing my hair, "other grandmas haven't lived." "I have." He nodded, solemn. "You ever want to ride again?" "I'll consider it," I said. But next time we stop for cinnamon buns. And that, dear listener, is how I ended up drinking coffee with a biker named Duke and riding through the hills like a woman with nothing to lose, except maybe a hearing aid. Moral of the story? Never underestimate a grandma in search of pastries. I should have known, just around the block was biker code for "hold onto your orthopedic bra, we're going off-grid." It was only supposed to be a short spin. Maybe a 10-minute loop. 20 max. But 3 hours later I was 200 kilometers south of anything familiar, clinging to Duke's leather jacket as we thundered down an open highway with nothing but dust, heat, and questionable life choices behind us. "Where exactly is the block ending?" I shouted over the engine. Duke turned his head slightly. "Almost there." "Where's there?" "Mexico." He just laughed like that answered anything. To be fair, I wasn't angry. I was exhilarated. The last time I felt this alive, I was sneaking into a Tom Jones concert with a wig, a fake ID, and the self-confidence of a woman who just discovered eyeliner. Finally, we pulled into a large dusty clearing filled with bikes, tents, beer, smoke, and tattoos in fonts I couldn't even read. A massive wooden sign read, Hellfire Rally 2025, a ride loud, live free, regret nothing. Regret nothing, I muttered, dismounting the Harley. Easy for them to say, they don't have a bridge club meeting tomorrow. The moment I took off my helmet, slightly lopsided and full of sweat, heads started turning. People were whispering, elbowing each other, pointing like I'd just descended from a Zeppelin. Then a guy with a handlebar mustache and more rings than fingers walked up, stared at me, and said, "Wait a damn second. Aren't you the one who stole a camel in Egypt?" I blinked. I borrowed it. And only for 20 minutes. And he followed me, technically. A murmur spread through the crowd like wildfire. It's her. The grandma from Cairo. She faked a limp to sneak past customs. I heard she hypnotized a guard with belly dancing. That last one was only partly true. It was more of an enthusiastic shimmy. Suddenly, people were offering me beers, high fives, and at least one grilled hot dog. A shirtless man handed me a cigarette, which I declined because I may be reckless, but I also respect my lungs and my lavender-scented wardrobe. Then I heard it, an announcement over crackling speakers. Next up, the annual Miss Leather Jacket Throwback Contest. Get your relics ready. Someone nudged me. You gotta enter. You'd kill it. I waved them off. Sweetheart, I haven't been Miss anything since 1969, and even that was by default because Darlene broke her heel and the other contestant got food poisoning. But the crowd insisted. Someone draped a vintage studded leather jacket over my shoulders. It was heavy. Smelled like whiskey and broken hearts. I looked like a cross between a rock star smother and a dangerous librarian. You look incredible, said Duke, adjusting my collar. You got this. That what? A life insurance policy? He laughed. Just go. Be the legend they think you are. So I strutted onto that makeshift stage made of wooden pallets in pure chaos. I didn't know the rules. There were none. Just a DJ playing Joan Jett and a group of women, and one very enthusiastic man, twirling, flexing, and posing in leather like it was a spiritual experience. When my turn came, I did what any self-respecting grandmother would do. I adjusted my support hose, winked at the audience, and did a slow, confident twirl that ended with me pointing at the sky like I was summoning the spirit of Janis Joplin. The crowd lost it. I don't even remember the rest. Someone handed me a sparkler. A guy named Chainsaw tried to pick me up physically, not romantically, though he did wink. A lady tossed me a glitter scarf that I managed to whip into a surprisingly elegant neck accessory. And then, before I knew it, the announcer bellowed. And the winner of Miss Leather Jacket 1977, the legendary Grandma. Confetti cannons exploded. A raccoon may have run across the stage. I was handed a small tiara, a plastic trophy shaped like a flaming skull, and a 6-pack of root beer. Backstage, someone asked what my secret was. I said, loose hips, good posture, and zero shame. Later that night, I sat by the bonfire with Duke, both of us wrapped in blankets and stories. Someone played an acoustic guitar. A dog named Pickle fell asleep on my foot. It was somehow perfect. Wasn't what you expected, huh? Duke said. Nothing ever is, I replied. But that's half the fun. And that, my dear friends, is how a polite cup of coffee turned into a 200-kilometer detour, a biker festival, a camel-based rumor, and a pageant victory I never asked for but secretly loved. Moral of the story? Never underestimate a grandma with helmet hair and unfinished business. And always say yes to life, even if it smells like gasoline. You know, darlings, if someone ever offers you a ride, take it. Even if it's loud. Even if it's bumpy. Even if it smells like gasoline and old socks. Because life? It doesn't always knock politely. Sometimes it revs its engine and waits for you to hop on or be left in the dust. I didn't plan to end up in a leather jacket dancing under the moon with. But here we are. And I don't regret a second of it. You're never too old to try something new. You're never too wrinkled to raise a little hell. So take the ride. Make the memory. Say yes, even if your knees crack when you stand up. And if you don't know where you're going? Good. Neither do the best stories. Next time, I'll tell you about my night with the magician and the 3 rabbits. Don't ask. Just bring popcorn. So go on, subscribe, sweethearts. Because life's too short not to ride. Like this video if it made you laugh, smile, or question your life choices. Share it with someone who needs a little wild in their Wednesday. And whatever happens, keep the engine running. Fade out with blues guitar riff and the sound of a motorcycle roaring into the distance.